talking today. I'm Andy Bayer. I'm on the left with my dog there. He's not here with me right now. And you've already kind of met Calvin.
Yeah, I'm Calvin. I'm also without a dog right now.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, first, just what is the problem bank? A few of you have used it, so we'll make sure we know what it is before you go forward. Then I'll talk about how to browse the problem bank, and then Calvin will switch over and talk about contributing to the problem bank, and then we'll be able to handle any questions at the end or throughout if you have them. So ultimately, what is the problem bank? It is a place in CodeHS that I'm going to show you how to get to right now. So on the left side of your screen on your teacher page, you'll see a problem bank tab there. There's also a place to get to it in the toolbox. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now so you can see it in action. So if we're on our CodeHS teacher page, so I'll start off with my teacher page. On the left side, you can pop down to Problem Bank and click on it, and you'll be whisked away to the CodeHS Problem Bank. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk through some of the things that you see on this page here. What you're looking at is a list of questions, problems that other CodeHS teachers or CodeHS staff members have created and made public to be used in any of your curriculum. It's a very powerful tool for browsing questions and finding, additional resources that you might need to teach a concept or a class. So you can see that at the top here, we have a way to filter on questions. So we can say what language we want. Say we're teaching a JavaScript course, we can filter for only JavaScript questions. You can also filter on tags. So if I want my students to have extra help and resources for functions, I can find problems here for that. So let's go ahead and look at a specific problem in the problem bank. I'm just going to jump to the first one. These are sorted by votes, so teachers can vote on these and say which ones they like the most. So I just click on it and I jump right into this problem, and you can see a little bit more about it here. So the tags that it has, this teacher said that this problem is about user input, strings, variables, and then they give a description for it. It's to create a Mad Libs game in Python. So this is similar to an exercise we have in Java, and this teacher has ported it over to Python. I'm going to go ahead and browse through a couple more questions just so we can get a firm grasp on this. So here's another one. This is a Carol exercise. We can click on this one, pop it open, and you see that this has a little bit of helpful starter code, and it has some example worlds that you can use. So if your code succeeds in these worlds, it works. So every single one of these problems that you see has been created by a teacher or a CodeHS staff member who is sharing this problem, and we'll let you use it. All right, so let me hop back in here. So in terms of browsing problems, like I said, you can filter on language, program type, and on specific tags. So I've set a couple up here. So I set up a filter for Java problems about strings. So say you're preparing for AP Java and your students are struggling with strings, we filter on the programming language being Java, the tags is strings, and you can see that there's a bunch here. There's one for removing duplicate characters. The characters that aren't duplicated. Checks how many times a letter appears in string. All these problems in Java that deal with strings. Another example would be JavaScript problems that use random values. So making random colors, setting an object to be a random size, things like that. There's a bunch of problems here we can check out. This one is from Paul Murphy, one of our teachers, and it explains the problem. It gives solution and starter code, everything you need to start using this in your curriculum. Okay, so the next question, of course, is how do I get this problem? Like, these teachers have put them out there. I want this problem. I want to use it in my class. There's a couple ways to do this. The first one I've shown here is add to playlist. There's a button at the top. And the second one is this drop down on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and show those to you in the actual problem bank. So say I love this dice game problem. This is that JavaScript problem that deals with random variables. I want my students to mess around with this. I want to see the solutions they come up with. So I can, on the right side here, I can copy the activity to a playlist. So I can choose which playlist I want to put it into. I'll just go ahead and drop it into this demo playlist that I have. And now in the CodeHS crate where I've made this playlist, it'll pop open with this dice game fully copied into my playlist that I can then assign to my students. You can see that we have our starter code and our solution code here. The second way you can, or I guess another place you can put it is just in the sandbox. Say you just want to mess around with it. So let's go over to another problem just so we can see a couple of different ones. So let's say, yeah, this maze problem, this one's great. So say we just want to mess around with this. What we can do is we can copy it to the sandbox where it just lets us like play around, run it a couple times, see if we actually like it. So I'll repeat that for you just so you can see what I just did. So you click the drop down here and then click My Sandbox, which will copy it to your own sandbox. All right, so here's this problem that another teacher made. I haven't implemented the solution, so my Carol is just gonna kind of move forward. But it has all of these worlds that this teacher has created and uploaded. So, you can play around with all these different things that have been made by another teacher. All right. That covers adding or taking problems from the problem bank, how to browse them. So I'm actually gonna let Calvin take over now. And Calvin's gonna talk a little bit about how to contribute to the problem bank.
Awesome, thanks, Andy. I just wanted to point out too, I haven't seen any questions so far in the Q&A. So I'm gonna open the chat briefly. And if anyone has a question, you can go ahead and post it in the chat and let me know if you can't find the Q&A in the chat and we can help you find that. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen as well. Cool. Okay, so Andy's taken us through what the problem bank is and how we can browse all the different things in the problem bank and actually take things from it and use it in our own custom courses, our own playlist, or just mess around in the sandbox. So now the question is, okay, I can see other creations that teachers have made and use it in my course. How can I contribute? How can I make my own problems and let the community of CodeHS teachers use them in their classrooms? So I'll be covering how to contribute to the problem bank. So actually everything you make, every activity you create in CodeHS Create is automatically added to the problem bank. And on the Pro plan, you have the option to remove it from the problem bank. But by default, it's everything you create is going to be in the problem bank. So CodeHS Create is its own, whole feature. There's a lot you can do within Create, but I'll be going through an example of making a quick, simple exercise within CodeHS Create, and we'll see that it gets automatically added to the problem bank. So yeah, where do we find Create? How do we even get started creating our own curriculum in CodeHS? So similarly to how we navigated to Problem Bank, we can get to Create. Well, I want to make sure you guys can hear me, right? I'm not muted.
Yeah, I can hear you, Calvin.
Okay, great. Yeah, so from the teacher page, we can see Create in our sidebar and also up in the toolbox. We can just go straight to Create from there. So let me switch gears here and show how to get there. So if I'm on my teacher page, I can see all my sections right over here. I can choose to go to Create, or I can go up to my toolbox and just choose to go to Create. And so here we can see playlists that I've made and custom courses that I've made. A custom course is a kind of more full-fledged course with units and lessons and exercises. A playlist is much more lightweight. It's pretty much a lesson. So it's a series of exercises or quizzes, a series of activities that you can then assign to your students. So if you've already made a playlist, whether that's your own curriculum or problems that you've pulled from the problem bank into a playlist, this is where we can actually assign a playlist to our students as well. So I can choose manage classes and subscribe. This section, this APCSP section, is now assigned this playlist. And that's in general how you assign your own custom creation to your students. And then we create by going in here and editing. But before we dive into there, yeah, so once you're on the create dashboard, and these slides will be available after the webinar as well, we can either make a new playlist or a new custom course just by naming it here and choosing create. Once we do that, we'll be taken into the editor, the create editor for that playlist. We can add an activity to the playlist, and we'll see that as soon as we make the activity, this in problem bank switch will be automatically set to on. On the pro plan, you have the option to turn that off. And so that's the important part here, is this in problem bank switch. But with that,
hey Calvin.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in here. Yeah, can you just slow down a little bit when you're kind of explaining some of this? Sounds like we're going a little bit fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
So yeah, to recap there, if I'm on the create page, there's two different things I can create. That's either a playlist or a custom course. For the most part, a playlist is generally sufficient. It's much easier for you to assign to your students because it's analogous to a lesson. It's just a series of activities. And so generally we'll be writing the name of our playlist there and choosing create to build out this list of playlists. If you're interested in building out a full course with units and lessons within the units and exercises within the lessons, then we would create a custom course. But I'll be covering making a playlist and contributing to the problem bank via a playlist. Yeah, and so we'll see this live in the editor as I go through, but these are just some screenshots of what happens when you create a playlist. It'll take you into here. You just name the activity that you want to make. In a little chat. One sec. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we'll name the activity there, and that will pull up the editor for the activity. And there's a lot we can do within there, but the main important part for contributing to the problem bank is just making sure that that switch stays on. And we'll see all this live as I go through the full flow. But before we dive in and make an activity together, I want to take a moment and make sure I get a chance to answer any questions that have come up. Yeah, sorry, we can start fresh right from the teacher page. And you can always come back to this video after if you want to follow along on your own create. But yeah, I think we're ready to go in and just try it together. And we'll start from the teacher page and just see this full flow of going into CodeHS creating a problem and contributing to the problem bank. So we can go ahead and start again from my teacher page. This is where you see your sections and students in your sections. Let's say I want to actually create my own curriculum and contribute to the problem bank. I can either choose create right here or go up to my toolbox and choose create right there. So let's go into create. This is my create dashboard. So far I've made 2 playlists and 1 custom course. In general, we're going to want to make playlists. It's analogous to a lesson. So let's go ahead and just make a brand new playlist from scratch. So this will be called some new JavaScript. We'll call it JavaScript function practice. So I want to make some extra activities for my students to practice writing functions in JavaScript. So I've given the name of my playlist and I just choose create. Awesome. So now I have the opportunity to edit some features of this playlist, whether the name or the description. So I can just say extra practice for JavaScript functions. Whether or not it's released, so I can actually hide this while I edit it. That way if it's already assigned to my students, they can't get in and see these half-completed exercises. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep this released. If you want, while other teachers are searching, so in addition to the problem bank, we actually have the playlist bank as well. So you can actually find full playlists and use. So here is a good way to signify to other teachers what the main programming language of this playlist is. So I'll say that it's JavaScript. And again, these are, you can dive in and just start creating without setting these. But this is just a nice helpful way to show other teachers what this playlist is about. But if I want to actually start creating activities within this playlist, I can go ahead and just add an activity. So I want to assign a activity to my students where they write a function that returns the min. I'll call it return the min, and just press enter. And now we'll be taken through step by step the process to create a new activity. And there's a lot you can do here. You can make exercises, you can make examples so that students aren't asked to complete anything. It's just some example code that they can play around with. You can make your own quiz. Here I'll actually be making a unit test. And this is actually different from an end of unit exam. A unit test just means it's testing a single function. It's a small piece of code that students are tasked with writing, and unit test autograders are really easy to make. So I want to show creating a unit test here, and we'll make it in JavaScript. So I'm choosing unit test JavaScript, and all I have to do is create the activity. So the first thing we're asked to do is write a description. This is what students will see when they first enter the activity. So I'll say, write a JavaScript function that returns the minimum. We'll say that takes in 2 parameters, 2 ints as parameters, returns the minimum of the 2. Save that. Now, we can either choose next, or we can just directly click on code. Let's do next. So we write the starter code and solution code for this. Starter code, I'll just leave a note to the student saying, write a function called min that takes 2 ints as parameters, returns the min. Solution code, here's where I'll actually write what the students should write. I want to make a function min, takes 2 ints, a and b, and I'm just going to return the minimum of the 2. So if a is less than b, I want to return a. Otherwise, return b. So this is what we're going for, and this can be anything. I'm just doing a simple exercise for returning the min, and that's it. That's our starter and solution code. So we'll keep going. Now we make an autograder. For unit tests, it's really simple. I'm just going to add a test case, and it's going to call this min function that I've written here, and it's going to call the student version and the solution version and compare the results. So we'll try calling min. We see it takes 2 parameters, a and b. So let's call it with 0 and 1. Let's call it with 1 and 0. And let's call it with -1 and 1. We'll save those. And now we can do teacher notes. So these show up in the problem bank. We'll just say, nice activity for testing functions and parameters. And then this will automatically be set to on, but this is really the important switch for whether or not this activity that we've made is going to end up in the problem bank for other teachers to use. And that's it. So we've made our activity. If we want to see what it looks like, we can go ahead and view activity. So this is what students will see when they are assigned to this activity. They come in, they say, oh, okay, I have to write a JavaScript function that takes 2 ints as parameters and returns the min. Let's go. So if I'm a student and I write my function min, and I simply return 0, when I go to check, that's actually correct for these 2. But it is not correct for this one. So I see that I haven't quite solved it. But yeah, so that's what the activity looks like from the student's perspective. Now that I've made it, let's make sure that it's actually in the problem bank. So I'm going to go back to the problem bank. And if I go ahead and search for an activity called return the min, that is a JavaScript unit test. Boom, there we go. We see this activity that I just made. I'm going to go ahead and upvote it as well. Yeah, so now it's out there. You can find this in the problem bank as well if you search for return the min. This is an activity that you can then pull into your own playlist or your own sandbox, or just try it out in the editor. You know, and add some tags as well. So now if you search for functions, this will also show up. So let's say that your teachers found this in the problem bank and you want to pull this into your own playlist. Let's go ahead and add this to a new playlist. So I'm going to add this to my JavaScript functions playlist. Great. So now it's been added. This playlist used to just have this one item, and now it has two. So now I have this playlist. How does it get assigned to my students? That's where this manage classes comes up from your create dashboard. You just go to create. You can see all the playlists you've made, and you can decide which of your classes are assigned to this playlist. So right now that one's assigned. I can assign this one as well. So that is the process for contributing to the problem bank. Are there any questions, Andy or Claire, that have come up that I can address?
Nope, not at this time.
Awesome. I just want to point out too, similarly to the problem bank, we do have a playlist bank and a quiz question bank. So if you're creating some extra quiz materials as well, those are some good resources to find individual quiz questions that teachers have made. They can similarly be searched and filtered, just like the problems. And then I can see full-on playlists as well that other teachers have made. And I can choose to just subscribe particular sections. I saw there's a chat. That's a good question. So is the quiz question bank just programming questions, not seeing too many cybersecurity? It depends. I'd say most teachers on CodeHS are creating programming oriented materials, but we can, always search, especially the CS Principles exam review that definitely touches on some cybersecurity. So let's say I'm teaching APCS Principles and I want to look for a specific learning objective. If you're teaching CSP, these would all be found in the College Board framework. Some of those are cybersecurity oriented. But let's just see if we search for, or let's search for fish, like phishing attack. Cool. Yeah. So we see there are some activities that address those concepts as well. So we're getting a question about contributing a challenge problem. Add a child object. I'm not too sure what this question's asking, but if we want to take this conversation offline, we can definitely talk specifics about how to contribute specific activities one-on-one. But this is the overall process, and I think this is a really cool feature of CodeHS because you're not the only one out there teaching computer science. We have so many teachers on the platform, and we want to get you guys working together to share the things that you're making, share the awesome problems that you've been creating, and the awesome quiz questions you've been creating, and get some more collaboration among teachers in the community. So I think that's about it for me. Claire, Andy, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this webinar?
I don't think so. And if there were any questions that we didn't get to answer on here, we'll follow up after the webinar individually with teachers. Yep.
Great. So these slides in this video will be available shortly. We'll send out a link to everyone who attended so you can rewatch this video and follow along in your own